Hi everyone, today we're going to cover Anbernic's latest handheld, the RG552. The RG552 is Anbernic's first dual boot handheld, able to boot into Emulate Linux operating system as well as Android. The RG552 comes with an RK3399 hex-core processor as well as 4GB of RAM and a stunning 5.36-inch IPS LCD display at a roughly 5:3 ratio of 1920x1152 pixels. It's also Anbernic's first handheld where they've included a full power brick along with the standard USB-C and instruction manuals, which is a good addition. You're also able to purchase the RG552 with a variable size micro SD card full of ROMs or without. The moment the RG552 comes out of the box, you appreciate its size and weight. For a plastic device, I was definitely surprised by its overall weight, but the star of the show is definitely its screen. The 5.36-inch IPS LCD display is genuinely a great all-round panel, and the 5:3 ratio really works with favourable upscales when retro gaming. So straight out the box, the RG552 certainly looks like a bigger version of Anbernic's previous handhelds. It's got the same controller layout, side-by-side shoulder buttons and so on. On the left side we've got the volume buttons, on the right the power button, and on top HDMI out, one USB-C for data, one for charging, the headphone jack and space for the fan's airflow. Turning it around we've got the fan intake as well as rubber holders found in the majority of Anbernic handhelds. I do think the finish on the RG552 is very good. The black model I have certainly has a metalish look to it and a very professional finish. On the bottom we've got a micro SD card slot for the Linux OS in slot 1, a second slot for storage and a reset and almost annoyingly placed function key right next to it, as well as the speaker grills. I'm a big fan of the Anbernic handhelds. I have and play on quite a lot of them, and most recently the RG351MP, and I think the RG351MP was the perfect form factor for this type of control scheme. Where the RG552 is the size and weight that it is, as soon as you hold it in your hand it just doesn't feel as ergonomic compared to previous smaller Anbernic handhelds. That's not to say it's bad, but it just could have been made a lot more ergonomic by adding some handle to the back of the handheld, stacking the shoulder buttons and putting some more consideration into the weight distribution. The directional inputs, for example, are good as per the majority of Anbernic handhelds. There's a really strong feedback from them, the feel is really good, but it just doesn't feel immediately right to me due to the additional weight being put on your fingers. This meant the motion from left to down to right for my medium-sized hands felt slightly uncomfortable, and getting the motion correct took some getting used to for me personally. Shifting your hands and the handheld's weight down to use both analog sticks mid-gameplay is something I still haven't got used to. The weight shift is quite dramatic, and this, alongside with the 2.4 GHz limitation of the Wi-Fi, is enough to put me off streaming with the RG552, but instead use it purely to focus on the retro gaming, which traditionally favours directional input buttons, which is certainly the most comfortable way to use the RG552. The analogs do support both L3 and R3 presses though, so at least from an input perspective, a full control scheme is covered. The analogs do have pretty decent travel and are recessed really neatly into the case, which is a great design choice, which does make me wish for some handles at either the back or bottom of the device even more, as with the right ergonomic design, the controls would be mostly of a very high standard. I say mostly because although I really like the buttons in terms of their position, feedback and travel, at least on my unit I had a couple of buttons recess at a slightly different speed than the others when button mashing. During standard normal gameplay I never actually noticed it, but only noticed it while trying to button mash some buttons during a game of Mario Party. So I thought I'd mention it here. Normally these types of issues are caused by the painting of the buttons and can be pretty easily resolved, but at the asking price of the RG552 I had the expectation that these types of issues shouldn't have passed Anbernic's QC process. The RG552 is priced at over $200, and when I'm spending more than a couple of $100 on a Chinese handheld, I tend to prefer purchasing from a trusted known entity that I've used before and have used their customer service, which normally unfortunately adds a premium on top of getting the handheld directly from the manufacturer. The more premium the price, the more premium the expectation, so it's unfortunately disappointing to be pointing out fault to the ergonomics and design of the RG552, as Anbernics generally are really good at delivering the best of class in their handhelds. The best example of these are the fact that the power button isn't recessed like it was in their previous handheld, but sticks out with a slight uncomfortable wobble like the volume buttons do on the other side. This alongside having the function key right next to the reset button without having any differentiator between them is just asking for accidental presses, which all of which could have been easily resolved. So all in all, although I certainly wouldn't say the RG552 inputs are bad or of low quality, that there's certainly definitely room for improvement here, and they will be more harshly judged alongside the premium pricing. So I just wanted to do a very quick size comparison here for you to be able to gauge the size of the RG552. So first off, we have it against Anbernic's own 351MP, which absolutely is dwarfs. Next up is Palkidi's RGB10 Max 2, and then Nintendo's Switch Lite, of which is a very comparable size to both. And in fact, the RG552 will fit in a Switch Lite case very comfortably, which I always think is good to know. Lastly, it's up against the king of super wide handhelds, GPD's XP, which still holds the crown for the widest. As I mentioned at the beginning, the RG552 dual boots into both emulate Linux-based OS if a microSD card is inserted with it on the first microSD slot, and without it boots into Android 7.1. Anbernic have already released a couple of updates to both OSs, and my device came with the latest of both, which I hope is now the norm. The Emulate OS isn't anything we've not seen before, but the Android came with a load of preloaded software, some of them paid versions, which is super disappointing to see, and the ATB Ultra pre-installed and configured. Overall, Android's certainly my go-to and makes the most out of the touchscreen, but the 7.1 version is very limiting, not giving you access to the emulator versions which will give you the best performance out of the handheld, for example. So again, slightly disappointing when compared to something like Metroid Pocket 2 Plus, which software is far superior out of the box. Hopefully the handheld will be picked up by the scene, supported by custom firmware, which will stretch out its potential, but it is a shame that this side is mostly left to the community to uncover, which again will be certainly judged more harshly at this price point. I'll cut to some gameplay shortly, but just to mention that all gameplay was captured on the Android OS, mostly through RetroArch. With all the negatives of the RG552 in mind, the gameplay is thankfully where it gets to excel. The screen is of really high quality, and the scaling works really well for the majority of consoles. GBA in particular looks absolutely stunning on the RG552, so much so that I had a great time replaying Zelda's Minish Cap through to completion over the festive period, and really appreciated the game more than ever while playing it through on the RG552. Focusing on the Metro gaming is definitely what the RG552 does best, especially when your hands aren't switching positions frequently like they need to on more modern games. I haven't included any native Android gaming or streaming, as my primary interest is retro gaming, but please do let me know if you'd like to see more of both when covering the later gen of handhelds, and I'll be sure to include them in later reviews. So I'll cut to some gameplay now and summarise it up at the end. So all in all, I do like Anbernic's first dual boot handheld. It really does shine when playing retro games, which is ultimately its point. However, there's a lot of stiff competition out there, including some of Anbernic's own previous handhelds, and currently the RG552 has a lot more to give him the potential of the device. This is a shame, as I really would have liked Anbernic to come out swinging in terms of the software side, rather than still rely on this amazing community to bring the best out of it. There's also a couple of ergonomic niggles that will, and rightly so, be judged far more critically at this point than it would have previously. If you've currently got a couple of handhelds and willing to sell one to cover a fair chunk of the outlay, then the RG552 is a good upgrade. If you're looking for your first retro handheld and want a large fantastic screen and everything pre-Gamecube to play without pretty much any config, then the RG552 is a great choice as well. Though whether it would stay in your collection forever or be sold by one in the upcoming competition in a future Anbernic handheld is yet to be seen. So that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching.